One here from Talking Films Online, TFO for short. TFO was founded almost on a whim by Professor Nikila and Dr. Geeta Vishwanath in June 2020 during the lockdown. Since then, TFO has had uninterrupted discussions on films from all over the world every Saturday at 9 p.m. on Zoom. It is a group of film scholars, researchers, students, teachers, and anyone passionate about cinema. It has been our practice to invite people to select and lead the discussion of the chosen film which we watch in our time and place. On some occasions, filmmakers, editors, and cinematographers have also joined our sessions. Aparna Sen, Amol Palekar, Girish Kasaravalli, and Adur Gopalakrishnan, to name a few. We have held film festivals such as East European, Iranian, Women's Cinema, and others. In the month of June each year, to celebrate our anniversary, we hold a smartphone short filmmaking contest for students and a lecture series in various university departments. In September 2024, we held our first offline event, an international seminar on Indian cinema in the digital era, continuities and discontinuities, in collaboration with Forum for Contemporary Theory, Baroda. Today, we are going to discuss the documentary film TAANGH. I also take the privilege of introducing the director and our discussant today. Bani Singh, the director and producer of the film TAANGH, was gallery visualizer and content interpreter at the Visual Virasat-e-Khalsa Museum, Anandpur Sahib, Punjab. She studied at NID, Ahmedabad. She is former senior faculty, Shrishti School of Art, Design and Technology. Today's film was suggested by Randheer Kour. She is a faculty of Government College for Women, Parade Ground, Jammu. She did her doctoral research on Kashmir conflict in novels written in English, Hindi, Urdu, and Punjabi. Now I invite Randheer to initiate the discussion. It's over to you, Randheer. Thank you.
Thank you, Yagnesri. Right. Thank you so much. And I would like to start the discussion with a thank to Bani. Bani, thank you so much for such a wonderful film. Because of this film, I was able to recollect my own memories, because I also have the same experience. My father was also suffering from the same kind of problem before his passing in 2022. So thank you so much for the wonderful film. And a disclaimer that I'm not a person from film studies or film criticism, but yet still I relate with film at many levels. So I would like to start with the title of the film itself, TAANGH. This word is almost obsolete in a day-to-day use. But yes, I really love this word, TAANGH, TAANGH and Sikh, very, close to each other. Yeah. So for Bani, there is a very beautiful Dogri song which says, "Loka mi ki tang sajane di, mere manne ala rahi gaya cha." So it's beautiful because we have lost this word in day-to-day communication. But yet the beauty of the film is that because of the efforts of Bani, you're really able to fulfill some of the desires, some of the TAANGH, with your effort to cross the border and finally locate and find Shah Rukh. And, that's the, I think only, that's where only you see Nandi was so happy when Bani brings the memories of Lahore ancestral home, Shahrukh, photos of Shahrukh, you'll see that, oh my God, that man was so happy to know, and oh my God. And Shahrukh, of course, you brought smile to both these beautiful people. Shahrukh, when he got to know that Bani is the daughter of, this person, what's her name? Guri. He says Guri. Oh my God, he was so happy. So you were able to some way fulfill some of the tangs of this Nandi and his friend. Uh, uh, what is more interesting and pertinent for discussion is that how this film, like there are three different aspects: partition, trauma, being a refugee, and at the same time, the mental health of the elderly people who cannot speak either because of dementia, Parkinson, or paralysis. So I would refer to a few of the dialogues from the film. I think it will shed more light on it. But I'm trying to say that how we need to understand all these three different but interconnected aspects. Like somewhere he says, I think Keshav says that Pakistan was considered as a joke by the Government College Lahore, the Indian hockey team. And one more, there are three dialogues I would like to refer here when he says that when they got gold, they were still refugees. And third, that partition of India made its presence in the subconscious mind, right? So I don't know how to put this in words because my father was, I hail from a Punch. Our ancestral home is also on the LOC. So that's the last village on LOC. And my family visited temporarily partition. I mean, temporarily, they were refugee for 1 year only because they leave that border area and they shifted to the most safe place in the town. He witnessed, of course, 84. So, so this like we were also experiencing when he was like not able to speak, and he also witnessed all those traumas. And since I have this experience of interviewing all those first generation partition survivor, so I found that most of this elderly generation, the first generation partition survivor, they have this hallucination of their homeland. Like I refer to one of the poem of a poet from Punj. He had written a long narrative poem on partition. The poem starts when people start leaving their homeland and how they managed thirst and hunger on the way. And it's a long narrative poem. And then finally they land Punj. And the third generation, the last stanza of the poem, where the third generation person says that दादे नी हुन मत नहीं है होश नहीं है पत नहीं है पिछला फिर भी याद है उसकी चलने लोरे चिट्टुर पहना है जे पूछो किधर जाना है बाणा है आपने घर जाना है आपने घर जाना. So this question of homelessness, I'll try to paraphrase the poem, of course not translate for the rest of the audience here. So the paraphrasing of the poem is: a grandfather has lost his senses, wit, and consciousness, but he still remembers the old days. And in a moment of hallucination, he just leaves home. And if you ask him, where are you going? He says, home. So this question of homelessness uh, and I think that these three disciplines, memory studies, elderly studies, and the third is partition. So I think and the trauma, how to deal with these elderly people. Even for us, it was really very difficult that how to address this issue, this problem when the person is not able to speak. now I think the film also talks about this very important question of belongingness, that where do I belong now? Where is my home? So I crossed the Wagah border to reach this place, which was believed to be a safe home. So do I really belong to this place? Because Nandi says that after 47, even we were not able to, the wounds of the partition not even healed. We had 84, right? So again, I would like to refer to the same poet. In another poem, he says, there was a ghazal in the last years, he says, Waga tappi kidi dilli aa gayi, ki keha Lahore piche reh gaya. Right? So he says, you cross the Waga to reach Delhi. Did you really find that, safe place, Delhi? What do you say, Lahore? It's left behind, So I think we need to address these unexpressed, unexplored, expressions. We really need to deal with it. And films, this particular film, I think, refers to it, that I think we'll discuss more about it, and I would like other people to join us. And the third part for Bani, when Bani actually goes to Lahore, and there was a kawali going on in the film, and I recognized few of the people. I was so happy that I could recognize few of the people, because I am part of that sangat, which happens every Friday and Sunday at Najam Hussain Sayyed's home in Lahore. And after Corona, they like turned to the online mode, and it's very interesting that most of the people in that sangat, which is still running there every Friday and every Sunday, most of the people are from this part of Punjab, either Haryana, either Punjab. So, like I could recognize Shafkat was there, Abbas was there, Nusrat was there. There are a few people. So most of them they had migrated from here. Their forefathers, of course, they must be the second generation. Their fathers must have migrated from there. So I was thinking that how these people fulfilled their longing. So they organized this group, like they have been reading classical poetry from the last 40 years. So I think this is their way, that how they fulfill their TAANGH, their desire, their so that was really beautiful, adding just one slot, one shot of that mehfil. That was really very interesting. And one more thing, just like to add, though it's not related to film, but yes, for me as an individual, like when we grew up, the kind of the idea of Pakistan we had in our mind, through the social, of course, not social media, through the television and the print media. And when I finally went there in 2007, that was an iconoclast experience for me, because the kind of a, because it was a pilgrimage, it was on pilgrimage visa. I went there with my parents during Guru Nanak's birth anniversary. So we were in very large group. So the kind of a warmth and welcome we received there, that was so amazing. Of course, they were not there for only making money. We could sense that they also long for us. So that welcome was because of that longing, I think, I believe. Right. And one more thing. I would like to this film also connect me somewhere, that I too have one TAANGH, like to go and finally meet all those people whom I meet every week on this online platform. I wish I could go Lahore and meet Najam Sahab and the Sangat. I just love those people, but that's not so easy. I think that is the reason Nandi, throughout his lifetime, would never manage to go there. And yeah, and last thing that I watched this film twice, but I think I cried 4 times. Yeah. So yeah, so I think this is all about what I felt and where I connect with this film. So over to whom?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate for throwing light on very subtle aspects of this film. What I would like to say is actually, though this movie focuses on three elderly people, it's a kind of rediscovery of emotions of millions of Indians and Pakistanis who were actually torn apart because of some political reasons. Really, I enjoyed the movie as well as the discussion that you went with. Thank you so much. Now the session is open for anyone to come in and share your views on the movie.
Can I come in, Yagnashri?
Please.
Yeah. Thank you, Randheer, for opening out several discussion points. And thank you, Bani. I've already told you that absolutely enjoyed your film, so poignant. And like Yagnashri and Randheer have already said, I too, actually cried during some of the scenes. And along with, yes, it has a lot to do with, history, the history of partition and all that. But I also thought the way you brought in this question of the body, the body is so central to your film, because on the one hand you are dealing with three men who were, some of the fittest of their generation, able-bodied men playing a game and winning for not Shah Rukh but Keshav and Nandi, winning the gold for their country, and Shah Rukh also a very accomplished hockey player. And then, to see them, uh, you could of course only show us the aged body, and the able bodied were through the images, newspaper cuttings, and then some old video clips. So I found that very interesting, and I thought it was, a pointer to the more profound theme of the transience of life, uh, uh, which is something that cuts across cultures and borders and peoples. So that was something very interesting for me. And I also thought the film was as much about your father as it is about yourself. This kind of strong, really, all encompassing desire that you must have felt to to kind of restitch certain memories, and then like bring them back for your father. So that was something very, very moving. There was one question I had for you. I was wondering if your father knew that you were making a movie of him. Had you told him, or was it because a lot of the conversations were also full of fun? I loved that. There was so much fun. It looked like you were having a lot of fun filming him. And then there was a time when he was also getting a bit annoyed with you, and then he was saying stop it. He was trying to say stop it, or
Yeah.
something of that kind. So, I thought that exchange was really very, very touching. I was really overwhelmed by those scenes. So I was just wondering if, you
So I
know,
had told him that I'm making a film.
mhm,
But I wasn't a filmmaker at that time. And it just so happens that I was never particularly, even attracted to the camera. So when growing up, it was my father who often held the still camera. I mean, I'd studied design, but I'd studied industrial design. So I was very much more about material and wood and things like that. So, so that's why there was so much fun and spontaneity because I don't think he took me very seriously. So when he would see me with the camera, his first reaction used to start laughing as to what is this that you're doing. And to be quite honest, I understood that this is a very, very important oral history project. Fortunately, because I'd worked on the Khalsa Museum, and I had by that point understood the land of Punjab, because I was fortunate in that project. I was working both in the research team and the design team. I was the bridge. And it's in some ways magical about how that project, in many ways, prepared me for this. Because when the story had begun trying to understand the colonial story of the gold of 1948, but quite by chance, I was actually sitting with my father with that iconic 1948 hockey team, that photograph, which in hockey history is an iconic one. And
absolutely.
I was going, and as you know, my father couldn't speak at that point. He'd lost his speech. So I was going player by player and saying what I remembered of them and what I had already read up. And then my father used to manage to give me pointers, and we had very complex conversations about many subjects. But it was always a 20 questions. I had to get the context, and then I had to verbalize, and my father would say yes, no, or point me in a different direction. And we came to the top right hand corner, and it was Keshav, my father, and Amir. And I knew that all three were from Government College Lahore. So it was literally like this penny fell in place. And I said, Government College Lahore. And I saw that college team within the Indian team. And so it's that made us go back to Pakistan, but we were going back to his Lahore. So it's almost like, you went past the trauma and you entered a very safe space, which was the college. So my father, his face lit up and he started talking about it. And because I saw that response with him, and that's when I realized that, okay, that colonial story is a very important one. Luckily, the camera was already in place, but I understood at a gut level that this is possibly even more precious. So when I went to Calcutta to meet Keshav, we were still tracking the gold story. But when he started speaking about Shah Rukh, I was, almost because somehow like Anil, who was the historian on board, who, was asking some of the very, very good leading questions, which were linking partition to hockey. He knew that we were actually tracking the 1948 final, and Keshav was in some ways going off track. But I don't know if you'll notice, like it was almost like my body was coming and defending that conversation. I didn't want him to not let Keshav go on, with that. So, in some ways, the discovery of Shah Rukh and the discovery of that whole incident that happened with Keshav happened on the set as we were filming. So that's why it's very authentic and the audience responds to it because it was coming as much of a surprise to me. It wasn't part of the script as to this is what's going to happen. And then it was like, okay, stay with that story. And, like telling the camera person and like somehow indicating to them that no, don't go off this because you don't get that moment again. You cannot ever. And also what I experienced as an oral history project is that I think the questions that the interviewee wants to answer themselves are often, and the important ones are often not the questions that are asked. when they start speaking about something that is actually not asked, one should stay with that because it often brings a whole layer and a depth. I mean, because the other thing that Keshav spoke about, which I didn't cover in the film, but is very valuable material for hockey history, is how he had got invited to be the captain of the 1956 team, but could not go because his English boss, who was in Brook Bonds, didn't allow him. So, again, colonialism came back, and Keshav named him on camera. And his daughter was on the sets at that point. And after that interview, I remember she talked to me and she was so overcome as to how could someone do that to my father. So, in some ways, I understood colonialism with Keshav sharing that bit of information with me. That this kind of the taking away of the masculinity of someone by saying that you can't do that. And I remember bringing that up with him again and asking him that, but this was the Olympics and it was a sure gold, and how could you not go? And he said to me at that point that agar Lahore hota to koi aur baat thi. That had it been Lahore, it was something else. But I had nothing. His family was tired of him wanting to continue with sports. And I mean, this also reveals to you the players who played the 1948 Olympics, and perhaps, I definitely the Olympics before that, but even the Olympics after actually got nothing. And the families were often just tired of this passion that these boys had. That, okay, now when are you going to really do the real work? Meaning earn the money. So all he had was this job. He had nothing else. So he knew that if he said no, he's going to lose the job. But I think he's always regretted it. And that brought a lot of bitterness to him, you know. And that was what was interesting that, people, and I know that my father also ran into a very tough, um, you know, officer in the Navy who actually interfered with his wanting to contribute in the services team. And he kind of would loom up every time my father was about to really play a very important match and give him instructions so that he couldn't play the match unless an admiral or somebody intervened. So I mean, I know that this kind of envy, or I don't know what it is, that causes people to stop someone who's brilliant. It does happen at a very real level. So these were so these are very complex characters, these three players. And I do feel, I mean, going back, to one of the first things that was brought up about the fact that, this is their age. You brought it up, and it was brought up by Randheer also, that I do feel that, like a lot of people would say to me when I began the film and then I started doing the research, people would say, "Aapne badi der kar di." Kyunki, now there are only 4 players left of that team. And I also felt like, but I said, okay, whenever the story is coming, one should record it. But to be quite honest, I feel I had almost called this film Godhuli Diaries also. No, because it was a film, it was that sun, which is at sunset, which is absolutely brilliant, but it's going to just tip over the horizon. And all the three protagonists were, for me personally, as the next generation after partition, who had grown up with the silence that was partition, and even as a child knowing that you can't ask questions about this gap that's always coming. I mean, there was their homeland, which was a land of milk and honey. Then there was the Rolle, the partition that they quickly jumped over, and then it was now. The everything began now. That they were willing to talk about it. Because, and I think they were so generous about the Pakistani team and about how they loved it so much because they were the age they were. I think if I had made this film even 15 years earlier, it would have been about how they won that match. But now they'd gone beyond that. They'd gone beyond a lot of things that are earthly in some ways. They'd done everything, they'd achieved, they'd seen, like my father and Keshav had seen the glory of hockey, and they'd seen it brought down to where it came also, which is a whole other film. So, I mean, I couldn't speak about the politics of hockey because it was again colonialism that changed that game, or that mindset, that mindset of, I mean, and because I had heard of that game, I had heard Keshav and my father speak about it. I was very curious about the game, so I would keep asking these players about that game. And at one point, Keshav literally told me to stop asking about that game. And I said, why were the rules changed? And he said in so many words that the Europeans were sick of losing because it had got reinvented here. And between India and Pakistan, they won it from 1928 to 1976 or something. So, I mean, there were all these interesting facets that were coming up. But I think for me, I mean, what I had done was that on the advice of, a person who was guiding me while I was making the film, uh, he said that, keep a diary, a visual diary of why you are doing what you're doing and what is coming to you, and that will later help you with your voiceovers. And I'm so glad I listened because, when I was editing the film and I was trying to work on my VOs, I was listening to those voiceovers that I'd kept over the, 2-3 years that I was trying to document the film. And one question that kept coming up, I was asking myself is, why am I making this film? And I would say to myself that, yeah, I know it makes my father happier. I know it's all those questions of England and India and Pakistan but it was emotionally, I was I was very, very committed to it. And it was more than all that, and I would keep asking myself, why am I making this film? And that answer actually came to me almost towards the end, of filming and way in the middle of the editing process. And it was because the tang that the daughter has, the longing that the daughter has to actually know that homeland, was it really real? Because as I say that, my memories are underpinned to their memories, and my sense of who I am comes from their memories. And in those memories, there was the gap and there was the silence. And it's before that, everything becomes unreal. So this is almost like for me, the thing of crossing that border and going there, it becomes like, wow, this place actually exists. I mean, Lahore is actually there, and I mean, of course, I know it's there, but I was going to my father's Lahore, and I mean, I do feel, I was very clear because of having witnessed the trauma that my family had gone through, and the whole community of, I feel India as a whole, and more so Punjab and Bengal. I didn't want to enter that area of the partition unless it was to possibly bring some healing. Because, I mean, it's a whammy because if you don't talk about it, we are not going to heal. And we also going to have to hear the other side. And, it's not only about the pain that was inflicted on us, but it's also about the pain that we inflicted on the other side. And I mean, so I think it becomes a difficult topic because there's a lot of shame on both sides as to the violence and the kind of inhumanity, and in some ways, I think I believe that when I try to start a conversation about this, it's to try to recover some of our humanity and to say it wasn't all bad. There were some very, very beautiful deeds and some very beautiful stories that can come out of this very, very dark period that could possibly, support us and help us rebuild ourselves. So I mean, it's all these layers that are actually there in the desire to make the film, in the intention to make the film, which do help you then look for those things.
Thank you.
That's what I
Thank you so
think.
much.
Anybody else?
Yagneshri, can I come in?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Thank you, first of all, Samvartha, for putting us in touch with both Bani and Randheer. I think, this was such after watching the film, I quickly messaged Geeta saying, my God, what a film. And I knew that she would connect for more reasons, than just because it was a moving film. Given our own circumstances of caregiving and so on, there was something so important that through which we connected with the film, I think. And Randheer, thanks for making this a very personal but also a very perceptive take on the film. I want to, talk about, I mean, I was curious about your entire process of making this film. For instance, I mean, at one level, it is about the footage that you put together, but it's also about how the film emerges as a compelling narrative. For instance, after you go to Pakistan and then you kind of come back, and then there is this whole discussion with your father of the college, and so you keep us on tenterhooks. So was this, did you really meet Shahrukh? Did anything happen at all? Because even before that, you say like how your mood of disappointment turned, when you got up from your sleep and there was an email saying that he was alive. So, I mean, narratively, the composition of the narrative, which, so it keeps us on tenterhooks. Trying to ask, did you meet, or was this a trip where you just met other people and came back? So I thought that part of the emotional charge to this film is also in the way in which the film is edited. What you want to bring in at what point in time, and so on. And second, the use of, for instance, not just voiceover, not just the interviews that you're doing, but also, let's say, a Skype conversation to take the narrative forward. So that whole episode about the bus and you recording and the phone being taken away through a Skype conversation. So it didn't need to be narrated in any other way except through the Skype conversation. So my question was, when you had these, Skype meetings, did you, is it that the recordings happened to be available to the editor and therefore went into your film, or were you staging this as well? And the other aspect that I want to talk about, which your film does more eloquently, I felt, was that, it's not just about a past that is no longer available and around which there is this silence, but it is also about what people made of their lives after. For instance, right at the beginning, you talk about your mother, the freedom that she got, that she wasn't just, married away, but the freedom that she got to work. And also the Calcutta episode where your father is employed and, which allows him to play hockey, bring Keshav over. So there is the life that they made. You're tracking that as well, which I thought was very, very important, because it's not just a narrative of what is lost, but also what they made of themselves, after coming here. And the last point I have to talk about is when Shahrukh is interviewed and he talks about what that defeat meant to him. And there was you see that there is so much, of the personal at stake. The hopes of the nation, yes, but it looks like this was probably the best team, or even a better team compared to India, and yet this sense that it lost, and all that loss meant at a personal level. I thought some of those were so wonderfully done. For me, these were the things that really worked about your film. Thank you. Yeah.
So, I would really like to, acknowledge right away that Obro, I actually worked with 3 editors, and Obro always said that he was the third one who came on board, and he understood what I was trying to do, and he understood what wouldn't work, with the footage that I had. But having said that, Obro Banerjee is absolutely brilliant. And his sincerity and commitment to the projects he takes on are like, I mean, he's the best, I feel, in many ways. And his commitment to this film was very high, and it was not an easy film to edit because I was at many levels, it was amateur, the photography, but I mean, I knew that that's what we had, and in some senses, the fact that it was fresh photography, it wasn't following the rules, and luckily because I had studied design, it wasn't so completely off. It was a very good balance. And so, Lahore is the place where I had hoped to have a crew. I had contacted some people, but wisely they didn't come on board because I realize now that I didn't have permission for this film. And if things could have gone wrong, things could have gone wrong for me, and things could have gone quite horribly wrong for them had they been supporting me without permission. So, for whatever reason, it took me completely by surprise that there was no one else but me. But I also knew that I only had 6 days, and I had taken one or two master classes about how to hold the camera, and I'd been filming my father. So, luckily, all that came and helped. And I knew that I didn't know whether I would find Shah Rukh. So that search for Shah Rukh is actually very real, you know. And what a friend of mine had advised me is that look, just record every conversation that you have, because even if you don't find Shah Rukh, we'll at least have something to go on. And fortunately, I do find Shah Rukh. So the Skype conversations are as they happened. I was like a possessed person. I was recording everything. And that's why maybe my father was fed up. When he came to visit me, it was like, stop it now. You're always with the camera. Someone who's never with the camera now, always with the camera. And what I had, because perhaps I'd worked on the Khalsa project as the content interpreter, and myself, even as a designer, I was very form led in the work that I did. And form is the intangible, right? The inspiration for it is coming from all sorts of sources. So even when I was filming the film, I was seeing it in layers. I was seeing it as the legacy of partition for not just that generations, but the generations that come after. So it's not just the partition affecting Keshav and my father and Shah Rukh. It's affected me. It's affected Shah Rukh's daughter. It's affected my daughter because we are hearing it. So somewhere, recording my daughter and, as much of what is around Shah Rukh is also that we are all part of this. And the memories we are inheriting and the memories that we are passing on, we have now become part of that. So it was my daily life. It's the daily life of the filmmaker, and this film and that song about Abhi To Main Jawan Hu, if you hear that whole song is also talking about an entire life, starting from the time that it's young, and then to the time that the person is old. And so it's like, my father was young, and today I'm filming him, and tomorrow that daughter who's watching and is on the sets is going to be a much older person and see. So I was trying to record all that, and I remember Obro used to say to me that these are three different films. So of course there are some layers which were also there in the film, which he said there's no way that this structure can carry more than this, but we kept as much of it as we could in. And one of the ploys that we used was that I wanted to revisit, those core points again and again from different perspectives. So you win the Olympic gold, you see it first from the point of view of the Indian team, but then you again enter the Olympics and now you see it from the point of view of the Pakistani team. So by the time you hear Shah Rukh, you're actually on his side. You actually on his side, and that was very deliberate. And we do that with a number of other things. The flag is the flag for my father that they all fought that gold for. But then the flag for me is like the beginning. It's like everything began here. It was as if there was nothing before this. So I am also trying to reclaim a past. And I understand that, this number is huge, because when you go to Pakistan, there's that same generation that's grown up with the parents who've gone through the trauma crossing the border on the other side, and they've grown up with the same silence. So the first time that the film was screened in Lahore, I wasn't there. And they also have had a lot of censorship, and they are not even able to see documentaries. So the fortunate thing for the film was that it won the Film South Asia Award. So when the festival went to Pakistan and they had the film South Asia Festival after 20 years, this film was definitely screened. And after the film, one of the filmmakers there was kind enough to record some of the reactions of the audience. And he shared those reactions with me. And those reactions are identical to the reactions on this side of the border. And then it's like, when we have the same story, uh, uh, it's just so unbelievable. Like, however, 100 years later or 70 years later, if not sooner, we will wonder how could this humanity be divided when so many of the experiences are the same. And this is such a artificially brought up divide. Because if the people could talk to each other, uh, the name TAANGH came up in Pakistan. I mean, Randheer is right that it is not used so much in India. But when I was in Pakistan, and people would recognize, first of all, I mean, a woman with a camera is a little unusual. So people would ask me, what are you doing? And I would say, I'm trying to record memories for my father. And again, they would say, Sanu bhi badi taang hai ki asi buzurgan di zameen vekhiye. That we also have a longing that we see the land of our ancestors. So, when they were looking at India with those eyes, they were looking at it as the land of their ancestors and their own inheritance, in some way. So they were saying that we would love to exchange places with you and be able to go and be there. So, I mean, I understood the meaning of the word tang, I understood the meaning of the word junoon, I understood the meaning of the word ishq in a very different way in Lahore because it is used and you can understand that passion. Like I was talking to my father's, the person in the sports department, and I was describing to him about these boys. And then the way he used ishq in connection with his boys, it was very natural. So the vocabulary opened itself out, and Punjabi opened itself out to me in a very different way over there.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to come in?
Yeah, Bani, I just wanted to know that the dialogues of this person, Keshav, were they scripted or he was just extempore there?
Extempo. You cannot
Seriously?
you
Wow.
can script for Keshav. Keshav is I mean, he just flows with it. I mean, you can't tell
Yeah.
Keshav to do anything. He's just brilliant.
He was a sutradhar of the film. I felt as
Yes,
he is the sutradhar of the film because
he is.
this is how he tried to, connect all different
And he was
aspects.
politically, socially, very, very conscious of, I mean, I have other footage with him and I asked him how come he was putting it together like this. And he said to me, first he thought about it. He couldn't understand why I was finding it special, the way he was bringing light to a lot of the events. And then he just looked at me and, he said, perhaps it's because I'm very sensitive. And so there's that acknowledgement of the fact that yes, perhaps I do. And then I asked him, what do you mean by sensitive? And he elaborated quite poetically. And in many ways, he made me understand what is sensitive because at a level, he's a sportsman. He's blunt. He says it as he sees it. And at another level, just the way he observes things and the way he puts them together, he is sensitive. He's very sensitive. And he's very gentle, but he's very strong. He's very firm. And he doesn't like to lose. He doesn't like to lose about anything.
Yeah, at the same time, like this friend of Nandi, what's his name? Shahrukh. Oh my God. I mean, that is so beautiful. These three are, I believe they are best friends kind of people, but still very different. Like look at Keshav and look at Shahrukh. Shahrukh was like, say, मैंने अपनी गर्लफ्रेंड बनाना सी अगर ओदी बेटी ना होंदी ते I was like oh my God. And he was saying he was kissing the photos and like so happy and it says मेरी पुच्चियां देना उन्हें थे I was like oh my God. And like that was really beautiful when you're waiting for Shahrukh and he was about to come and you said now coming the hero of my film. That was really very hilarious moment. I mean, you captured it so well. Here coming the hero of my film. That was really, really wonderful.
I mean, I just want to say that, it's just a coincidence that Shah Rukh, Keshav, and my father belong to three different religions, right? And in many ways, these are things you can't ask for. These are things that happen and they are poetic. And I mean, just today I was speaking to somebody else about Punjab because I once again have gone back to the history of Punjab, and it's wonderful when you read the narrative about a place, a 500-year narrative, and you have the chance to read it together, because a lot of things keep falling in place, when you do it. And Punjab, it's such a pity that Maharaja Ranjit Singh's empire didn't succeed further, that it didn't live for longer and that the British took over and then it was brought down. But I still feel that till maybe a few years before partition, as Keshav, when Keshav says that, Pakistan was a joke for the boys of
Yeah, yeah. Government College Lahore.
Lahore. Because Government College Lahore, I feel in its institution, in some way did represent the syncretic culture of Punjab.
Yes,
And in
exactly.
that sense, the fact that these three were, from three different religions, but they were together in that team of Government College Lahore, and the United Punjab team was a very, it had team from all members, and they played as a team and they loved it, and they didn't want anything to interfere with that. So that's why for Keshav, you see, even that day when you bring up, the dialogue that you bring up, that Keshav said something was missing. Now, again, that is something that was not scripted. And I can tell you that that really came up because that day nothing was going right on the sets. A lot of disturbance. And we had to keep interrupting the interview. And Keshav was worried. He'd not had a very good day. And I asked him that question. And honestly, I had expected him to say it was wonderful because that's what I had always heard. And then Keshav said, oh, something was missing. And I was like, where's this coming from, And so in many senses, we would have loved to redo that footage. Though I was not redoing any takes. I was not, because I just felt that whether the camera, the camera catches a lie. If you redo it, it catches you. And this is somewhere the truth. And it came not in very good light conditions, not in very good color, and very bad sound. But I was very clear that that is when the story turns.
Yes.
So that forced me to go back and actually go into into his scrapbook. And it's when I saw that United Punjab team of 1946 and Shah Rukh and my father and everybody a part of it, that the penny fell in place. His best friend is not winning. He is watching the United Punjab team being defeated when Pakistan loses. How can he celebrate that? He's trying to take sides. He's trying to say, so this is what happened to that generation and to the boys who are partitioned, the women who are partitioned. You're forced to make choices that are just unfair. You're forced to emotionally divide yourself. And this is the cost of nationalism, which I see towards the end. And that's why I say that, what the film made me understand is that Keshav and my father left their watan behind.
Yeah.
This is what they gave up for the nation. And this is what Punjab and Bengal gave up for the nation. And I mean, I fully understood that only because I went through this journey with them.
True. And there is one very famous proverb about Lahore. I don't know whether you know, and for other people who joined us. Yeah. Jine Lahore ni vekhya jamme ni. So how would you translate it for others?
No, you translated. You're better at that.
No, Samvarta is better at translation. So, I think Samvarta will help me.
Yeah.
Like, जिसने लाहौर नहीं देखा वो कभी पैदा ही नहीं हुआ. So how to translate it in English for rest of the members here? This is very popular about Lahore. कि लाहौर जिसने नहीं देखा वो कभी पैदा ही नहीं हुआ. Like, so how do you translate it into English, Samvarta?
I'm sure everyone understands that much of Hindi.
Okay. Okay.
You're not completely Madrasis as you think.
There is Fabian, so maybe a little translate.
Yes. Okay. I mean, the one who hasn't seen Lahore has not even come alive or taken birth. I mean, come alive would be a proper translation, not
Yes,
take birth.
I
It would
think
be
that's
very biological. It's only through it's Lahore which breathes life into the existence.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Lahore was so central to the film, and as a student of literature, Punjabi literature, also you feel that Lahore is also Lahore and Multan and Kasur. They are the center of the whole discussion, the poetry, and rest of the genre. So Lahore is always at the center.
Mona, if I can just share one more point with you that, in my father and in Keshav, there were many contradictions, So
Okay.
it's like you can take the same individual, like you take my father, he didn't let me wear the color green
Oh,
because it was the color of Pakistan. Okay. So I used to argue with him and we used to have our discussions and say, why? And come on. But so if you only captured that about my father, you would think that he is a particular kind of person. And then there's this other side where Lahore, my memories of my father when I was growing up, when he was delighted, when he was thrilled with any experience, before he could think, what he would say was, Wah, Lahore banata. You know, that this is like my Lahore. And it used to be
mm,
confusing as a child because
mm.
I mean, here's the person who's in the Indian Navy. He's fighting a war. He's fought the 1971 war. He doesn't like the color. And when I actually challenged him and said, "Why don't you let us wear the color green?" He said, "I have, I have fought against this color. I have played my matches against this color." And I realized, took me. I mean, now I realize that somewhere, I think the concept of Pakistan is the construct that took away his Lahore from him.
Yes, exactly.
So when he sees the green, it is the construct of Pakistan. And
Exactly.
Lahore is not in that construct. So it's a very, my point is that the people who've come through that have to be treated with a lot of patience and a lot of sympathy. And we are the ones who have to make an effort to understand that even when emotions spill out, why do they spill out? And
Mm,
kind of reconfigure it for ourselves. Because then I know that if I could tell my father, Papa, is that the reason you didn't let me wear green? He
mm.
would possibly say, yeah. And he would also discover it with me because he was a man full of love. And if he met somebody from Pakistan, he was like, laying out the hospitality for them on a one-is-to-one basis. But as a government to government and in politics, was
Mm,
no two ways. He wanted, and this is something Shah Rukh, Keshav, and my father understood. And in a way, it's almost a relief that they didn't get to play that final against each other because it would have been like a gladiator match. They all wanted the gold for their country. And,
right.
and they all understood that we are going to fight it because then Shah Rukh is going to be a Pakistani.
Yeah.
And Shah Rukh said to me, he said, Hindustan ko to humne chhodna nahi tha.
Huh.
But Keshav and Nandi are what they are. So, it's not about or.
Mm,
Often it's about and they are contradictory narratives that coexist.
true. True.
And they are taken advantage of by politicians. But if you see the whole picture, they said this and they said that, and they are both true and they both coexist, but it doesn't have the meaning that
Yeah.
we constructed.
True. True. Very true.
Anybody else wants to, come in? Anybody else? Madam, I have a question for you. The thing is, Keshav was saved by Shah Rukh, and we have, twice Keshav narrating it, and then Shah Rukh also narrating it. Do you have any kind of, intentional of doing it for some specific purpose?
Yeah, it was again visiting that truth and visiting it from both sides. So actually, the first time I met Shah Rukh he saved so many people that he couldn't remember that he had saved Keshav, you know, and he would just go into a reverie of some factory owner or so many people that he would keep put in his car or take to the border or do whatever. And then he remembered it. By the time I met him the second time, he'd obviously been thinking about it. So as soon as I went, he said, "Mujhko yaad aa gaya," and he told me that whole story. And it was really poignant about how it was exactly as Keshav had said it. So
Yeah.
I actually in the film, whether it's the gold, whether it's the watan, whether it's friendship, whether it's this act of kindness that Shahrukh does, is it's about trying to see it from both sides.
Yeah. Even when he's,
Yeah.
when you say, "I loved meeting you," he immediately responds, "Same here," which
Yes.
resonates that love and longing on either sides.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think, Shahrukh, because I took him by surprise in some ways. After 68 years, he suddenly, it's like he had loved those friends, but he didn't know if he was loved back as much. And I think my going there somewhere completed that circle for him. And he poured the love he had felt for the friends he'd missed on me. You know, that's what I felt. And I think everybody in the room felt it, when we were filming him, because he was just, like a mountain of love. He was quite an amazing.
Yeah.
True,
Uh,
in
yeah.
some ways,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
I think there is a message in the chat box. It's in French. I think it's French. I don't know. It is. I cannot understand. You please just. There's a message in the chat box. I think in French.
No,
In
that's a translation for Fabian of your proverb.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you
Any,
for that.
anybody else wants to come in?
Yeah, I was I was watching it keenly towards the end when you say that you are talking about Watan, homeland, and the nation. So you say that, I mean, what do we call motherland? Does it emerge out of a nation's history?
Mm.
And then, so I was trying to understand this complex relationship through your film between homeland and the nation. So what happens that Nandi in his statements and others also, Keshav, they express how much happiness they felt when they won for the nation, when the tricolor was unfurled, when the national anthem was played. So how much pride they felt for the nation. And for the same nation, they had to actually forsake their motherland or watan or homeland. So that complex relationship, that how the nation demands you to sacrifice, to make certain sacrifices at its altar, that is very touching. And you make it also, you show it throughout the film, and you also see it through a statement. So on the one hand, that Nandi and Keshav and everyone, in fact Shahrukh, all of them, they are playing, and then after the partition, since the two countries, two nations are different, and even Shah Rukh cannot feel happy because he has some guilt feeling because of this nation belonging to a different nation when India wins. But how they are all together despite all these national differences of the national boundaries, they are all together because of this friendship, which lies in the heart, as Shah Rukh says that in the film. So that distinction I really like that you make between the homeland and the nation and the complex relationship between the two.
Yes, that's the truth, the thing is that I think human beings, we can be brought together and maybe we can be broken by stories. Stories are so powerful. And at that point, people are sincerely doing what they think is the best. And very often it's after the dust settles that you realize the cost, that has been paid. And that's why I feel that all the protagonists because the film is being made really the Godhuli moment of their life, they are very much able to reflect and, be very honest, because Shah Rukh is sharing how much the loss of his friends has meant to him. And his daughter did tell me that there were a lot of things that he said that he had not spoken of before. And one thing we have to understand, that Shah Rukh was not feeling guilt, actually. He was feeling a lot of disappointment because he felt he'd let his nation down. Because the fact that India was and Pakistan were being divided, it's a very complex kind of event that happens very, very fast, you know. And in some ways, all three of them are being loyal to their own nations. But it's just that I know for a fact that till maybe even 5 years before, or according to Keshav, even 2 years before the partition, they were all for the same nation. And then as that is coming to pass, it's divided into two. And they are allotted separate places, which are not changeable, you know. So, and that comes through very clearly when you look at the two Muslim players who were in the Indian team in 1948. And they chose India. I mean, Shah Rukh and Keshav and Nandi didn't have a choice. They couldn't stay back in their watan. They were going to be killed if they stayed back. But these Muslims had chosen India. But then I don't know what transpired. I mean, that could be a very interesting story for hockey history. But then they left and they went to Pakistan. So in 1948, they were in India and they were proteges of Dhyan Chand. But 1952, they were in the Pakistani team. And I spoke to some senior players as to why did this happen. And they did admit to me off camera that perhaps they were not being treated fairly. They were facing the stigma of being Muslims. So there are all sorts of layers. It's a very, very complex story. And I was exploring that fine line between the homeland and the nation. I was exploring it.
Would anybody like to come in?
Yes. Even this issue that was brought up by Sanjay about patriotism and nationalism. Nationalism is a political project, and patriotism is simply a love towards your own land. And how do you conceive that land? Whether you want to conceive it as a nation or not is a different issue. But when this patriotism and nationalism overlap, then it creates certain kind of tensions. I think at a certain point in their life, the characters in this movie feel that kind of overlapping. And now they are at a stage where they can look back and then disentangle the two. I think that was very important. In fact, few days back, I was speaking to my students about this difference between patriotism and nationalism, but it was very difficult to convince them. But after seeing this movie, I thought I should ask them to see this movie to understand it in a better sense. When patriotism gets subsumed under the nationalism, then it is not a problem. But when they come into conflict, then it becomes a different issue altogether.
Yes,
That
you're
was,
right. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I don't know. Please finish your thought. I think I interrupted something you were going to say.
I'll come back again, no problem.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say that, when we were editing the film, I was very deliberately wanting to use the Indian flag, right? And in today's context, this discussion did come up with the team that, I mean, now you're showing the Indian flag when we won the gold, and could this be jingoism? Right? And I was very clear about the fact that I think the flag has to belong to us again in the way we want it. And I know that for that team that stood on, on the victory stand in 1948, they were all in tears because they saw their flag go up above the Union Jack. So at that point, the patriotism was about, they were just coming out of colonialism. And there was that desire and one or two of the players had actually said that when we understood that the final is with England, we took a vow that we will not go back to India if we don't win this, you know. So the flag meant everything to them. And today, what does the flag symbolize to different people is a search that we again have to do. But for my father, the flag was everything. He was in the Navy after that. So this kind of disentanglement, I agree with you, but I just wanted to say that we were very conscious of using the flag in the film, and we used it quite deliberately.
Another important thing that I wanted to flag here is about the friendship comes out well, and also the kind of little competition between them. They didn't win, but he came later. That kind of little points that you score over your friends,
Yes.
that was also came out very well. And it was nice of you not to edit all those things and iron out those things. In fact, that added a kind of a touch of what I would say, a realism to the relationship between these friends.
Yes.
It is not simply about belonging to different nations, but that kind of little competition and tension between individual tensions that also came out in those interviews. I think that was very important for me to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. No, it's been so meaningful to have this conversation with all of you, and thank you so much, for this opportunity. Because, for me, it's these conversations that are most meaningful, and they help to clear one's own thoughts, and also about try to understand how this project could go on. Because for me, this film is also, I feel it's a way of being able to have a conversation differently about it's a difficult conversation which can be had. And, if the film can be used to continue those conversations, I would be more than willing. Like, I do share with the audiences when I see them now that I'm not putting this film online, because I feel when we see it online, we tend to see it alone, you know. And I see the difference, like, oh, in this case, we've come together to again share it as a group. And in that sense, we became a community. And I know the difference that a person has when they see it alone and when they see it in the auditorium with a group. So I keep saying to people that if you can get together a small group, even of 7, 6 people, I'm more than willing to share the link. But you see it as a group, don't see it alone. So I'll be more than happy if any of you want to screen it for a group, or you come across anyone. But I always request people just see it together with a group, see it at one time, make a commitment to see it, because then the story has its impact. Otherwise, it gets, dispersed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Get back to you, madam, because even I'm also thinking of, presenting it for my students in the classroom. Definitely, I'll get back to you. Thank you, Fabian. Would you like to come in? Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Go on.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for the film. I really appreciate this discussion. It's a very interesting discussion. As a foreigner, as a French partition, we don't really, very few of my students know what is partition. People know it vaguely, but only, the best students would know what happened during the partition. And the Europeans, I think they had been very bad on this history, and they never understood. I think they never understood that it was not only a dramatic event, but they never understood the emotional aspect, the emotional dimension. And I think this in the film is perfectly well showed. It's the demonstration of how an event is not only something in the story, it's also a wound of identity for the people. Something something that leads to memory holes, which means that the memory and the individual cannot really face the event because the event is too much painful. It's beyond pain. It's something very difficult, and it's many years now. We talk about 1947, and in so many documentaries, Indian documentary it comes back, which means that history is still, the pain is still alive and the wound is not closed. I mean, it is still an opened wound. So I was thinking about that, and you make it. You have the intelligence and the emotional also intelligence to so we can touch, we can figure the how deep it is, how deep is the pain of this historical event. And today there is, I think you don't have TikTok in India. And today there is a superstar. She's an American lady, and it's very funny. Everybody is making fun of her. She became an international star. She came from America to Pakistan because she found a lover on Tinder. And when the lover saw her, he escaped. And the whole town of Karachi protected her, sheltered her. And it's really very funny because all the Pakistani media came on and they really show their humanity. So you have lots of people who discover the people of Pakistan through this story, especially in France. They said, "Oh, we didn't know the Pakistan people were so generous." So they discovered through this TikTok story the people of Pakistan, and I found that was it was a very funny story to be connected with this movie. I don't know why I connected, but there is some kind of connection. It is how the West doesn't know Pakistan. The West knows India, and but the West doesn't know Pakistan. The West wants to ignore Pakistan. So I think it's very interesting how the Pakistan is inside this film, how we discover Pakistan also with this film. So yeah. And everybody, what Gita said at the beginning, I really do. I have the same kind of reaction. I think the film is so emotional. I cried twice, and I think there is a lot of intelligence in this film. And aging with grace is, I think, is a very interesting topic. I like this topic. I also made a film about aging with grace. And these people really do age with grace, with gentleness and resilience. And I was very moved by all the resilience.
Yeah, it was actually very inspiring. Even with their handicaps, uh, they were they were very complete, you know. I mean, I know that one of the first things I asked my editor when I took the footage of my father was that, you know, my father was very vulnerable when I made the film, and if in any way it compromises his vulnerability, then maybe I won't put the film in the public domain. And also, I wanted to know whether the footage was enough to make a good film. And the first person, my first cut editor was a woman, and she said, "No, she said we can't see how handicapped your father is because he comes across as so complete, and he's in charge and he's enjoying it." So yeah, that was quite a gift to meet people who were facing the handicaps and, you know, the difficulties and that age throws your way with so much grace.
Yes,
Inspiring.
grace. I would say they are aging with grace, which is not easy.
Very tough.
Very tough. So thank
Anybody?
you. I have one critic, you know.
Yeah.
I have
Mhm.
one critique, which is a technical critique.
Mhm.
I think the walking narration is very well controlled,
Mhm.
and the emotion is here. But there is something with the music. Um, I think sometimes there is a Pakistani music. It comes too shortly, and there should be some kind of if you have to do another film, um, you should try to get some kind of sound homogeneity, musical. Try to work on the harmony of the music. I think this is
Right.
my only critique. Uh,
It's interesting you say this because I was speaking with my editor and I was saying I would just love to work on the sound some more, you know?
yes, because there are very good ideas, but they go in different direction. For example, in the moment we hear the traditional music of this is Sufi Pakistan music, huh?
Yeah.
Uh,
The Kawali.
Kawali, yeah, Kawal, which I really love this kind of music. For me, it's incredible, inspiring music. And I was very frustrated because the piece is very short, and I didn't have the time uh, to really feel the music and really have this, have this music in my ear. And it's better to have one, two, three music, not too much music. Because if the film is full with too much musical dynamics and too much different harmonies, like Western harmonies, Kawal harmonies, it can be like a parasite. The music kills each others. So it needed, I think, to my point of view, some more work on the soundtrack and on the music. Sorry to say that.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I mean, I've been considering it myself. So let's see. Yeah. You know, I'm also trying to actually do a slightly shorter version of the film because I'm very keen to move it into curriculum space because
Yeah,
it would be a way of keeping the story going. If it could become a way of having a larger discussion after it, you know, in classrooms. So whenever possible, I try to work with teachers and see if they can use the film to teach a different history in class. I mean, I think something came up about history earlier, and I just wanted to share that, you know, that does this homeland come out of a nation's history or is it a place in our hearts? It really came out of my own experiences as a child and my history lessons, and my mother teaching them to me. And, you know, she was multitasking as a lot of women do. And, you know, it was a family that was recovering from the partition. So their entire focus was on rebuilding their lives. And it was like there's no time for reflection and you just keep moving on. And so she was, I think, ironing the clothes and keeping an eye on something. And she told me, okay, you read out your history lesson while I do all this and I can try to help you. And she also had a job at that time. And I read out my history lesson saying that India is the first country that won its freedom in a non-violent revolution. And my mother said, you stop right there. And I'm not going to teach you this history because this is false. And she was very upset. She was, you know, I mean, she was in a rage and in tears. And as a child, I felt very, very guilty. I knew I'd upset her by something I'd said, and I couldn't understand how can I not give that answer because that's what the history book says. But in some ways, perhaps the impulse to understand the story began then. And you know, it's about what goes missing in our history books. So, I mean, you know, if the film, this story is not necessarily going to come into the curriculum in India or Pakistan. But if teachers can use it or some other people can use it to show it to children, it's very valuable because whenever I've had a chance to go to school or college, and I do go whenever I can, if the film is being screened in the city I am, I'm asked by the students again and again that why aren't we taught this history? You know? So, I mean, it was just interesting that in some ways when they say that, it connects with an experience I had with my history book and my mother when I was a kid.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, can I please?
Yeah, sir. Yeah.
Thanks, Vaniji. And one word about the style or the form of documentary you have made, and it's having an interesting comparison with Anand Patwardhan's Word is Family. I mean, Word is Family, Vasudhaiva Kutumbam. I think it's in 2023. You made in 2022, and it's in
Yes.
2023. And and another more political in that sense, in the outwardly sense. Prisoner number 626710 present.
Yes.
But
Yes.
all three of it, I connected each of it because all three flows from a personal reminiscence. A tribute, Anand pays tribute to his mother and father. And 626710, a friend, a senior friend and his partner. It's told from their point of view. And your story starts with, or your film starts with reminiscence to your father and tribute to your father. And so fluidly, so personal, flows out into social and political without intention. I mean, is it the time we are living, and that makes this style of documentary to shape itself? I'm thinking, I don't press you for the answer, but that's I'm thinking, because looking at Anand has never made such a personal documentary. Say personal events come in his film, but he has made it so personal. And when you begin to view it, you think that, oh, it's so simple a film talking about their parents and all, but slowly it flows out into society. It engulfs into society, other people, politics, and finally comes around to realization that, and it takes more time for us to realize that how more political this is than personal. So this style of documentary is wonderful, wonderful. I don't know, it doesn't come just as a technical stylization of a artist, but more out of socio-cultural commitment and socio-cultural outlook, which our time demands. And I'm very happy that three of the documentaries on this kind of stylization is something very eager to watch, because other documentaries which are coming from other parts of the world is looking at their socio-political situation in a more objective terms, as if it's happening makers outside. But this style flowing from inside and then showing us what is society and what is politics and going back to history, and everything becomes a fluid, and past becomes present, and our future, we start understanding our future. So I really was, trying to understand this stylization, documentary stylization. That is one thing. And second thing is, I was wondering when you about that editing. So one is whether Shah Rukh is alive or not. So then suddenly comes out. But next one, you go there, you don't find them, and then come back and you cut and come back to your father. Hello, I have come back, and show him, but not showing Shah Rukh shots. It's a kind of a suspense. I was expecting that what's happened. Did Baniji did not meet him? Something else. And it comes as a suspense. And then I thought, when you were talking to her father, I know, yeah, it's coming. Yeah, that's kind of either deliberate editing or something. But it's very interesting. Thank you for that.
I think that was deliberate, and that was, I think Obro very much, that is his style of editing also. He likes to keep you, in suspense for as long as he can. And this was something that he wanted to do it like this, and I agreed with him, to
Yeah,
kind
thank you, Paniji. Thank you. Thank you.
yes.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Would anybody like to come in? Anybody else want to come in? If none is there, shall we wind up, madam?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bani, for sharing such a wonderful film and sharing your thoughts and experience with us. I thank Randheer for initiating the discussion and pulling many strings into it. I thank all the participants who contributed to this discussion and enriched it. And my special thanks to Geeta Madam and Nikla Madam for giving me the opportunity. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you
night.
so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Thank
much.
you, and good night.
Good night. See you next week.
Good night. Thank you.
See you next week, next Saturday, same time.
Yeah. Thank you.